Hello everybody, I'm Avian and we've been working our way through how to make a Stardew Valley mod series using my garden cottage mod as an example. Our last couple of videos we've been setting up our Maple Park characters and creating new NPCs. So today we're going to start working on some of the dialogue files. And you actually get to see me do this one from scratch because I don't have a base file set up for our Maple Park characters yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open VS Code. We're going to start a base file, and I'm going to show you how I set that up, and then we will put our Maple Park characters information all together in one JSON file, just for simplicity, because they're not going to be super complex or anything. So I've got this open as an example. What we're going to do in VS Code is we're going to go to New File. I'm going to name this one mpchar for Maple Park characters dot JSON. Hit enter. It's going to prompt me where I want to save this. I want this to be in my main data folder as opposed to Jackie's folder, which is what was currently open. So you can see I've got my characters, my individual characters, pets, mail, all of that. So I'm going to keep this right with the main data file. If I need to move it later, I can. And now I have an empty file. The next thing I'm going to do, because if I don't do this, I will forget, and then there will be some problems down the line, is I'm going to go back to my top level of my folder. I'm going to open my content JSON. I'm going to scroll down to my includes, which is right here. Let me go into word wrap mode. There we go. So this is where I have told my mod all the files to include. We're going to go to the very end. We're going to name it mpchar.json, just like I've spelled it in my file name here. We're going to put exactly that there. And now, when my mod loads, this will be included with all of the other files. And I don't think I need to edit. I do need, okay. So the next thing I need to do is I'm going to scroll down to my blanks, and I'm going to load in the schedules and dialogue for Jean and Kenna. So it's going to be, and I'm loading in a blank file and then applying changes in our main file that we're about to make. And doing this helps to avoid some of the bugs. And it gives, so the way the game works is it is hard-coded to look for dialogue files in the characters folder based on the character's name, and it looks for schedules in the schedules folder based on the character's name. So if you don't have them, then the game doesn't load anything because it thinks that doesn't exist because there's nothing in the folder. So by loading a blank in, you're editing the information so that it believes that there's something in the folder. And then when you go to your JSON file, we will use the action edit data. So this basically just loads the information from a blank file so that the game knows where to look for it. And then the one we're about to make will tell it what goes in. So we're going to do, see, I'm going to copy character / dialogue. And then I'm going to put a slash. Did I use, here's where I've got to double check my names because I don't remember if I had 1 N or 2, and it's going to make a big difference because if I choose the wrong one, it's not going to load. So it's characters / dialogue / character name. And then I'm just going to change that to. And since I'm already doing this, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for their schedules. we will do schedules in another video, but at least you'll get to see the setup. So it's characters slash schedules slash character name. And you can see I've just got a long list of things that all just load from a blank JSON I've got in there. Let's see, so that we can save. I don't need, blanks is different. Everything else is good on the contents. So next, we're going to go back to our blank JSON that we've just made. We're going to open and close on a curly bracket, because you always have to have an open and close bracket. I'm just going to remind myself of the setup here. Okay, so it is a pair of quotes, changes, colon, and then we want to open and close square bracket. I'll put a space there. And then everything we load in for our dialogue is going to, not even just for our dialogue, everything we're going to load in for our Maple Park characters is going to go into this changes section. We are starting with the dialogue though, and there are 2 sections for dialogue. So what I'm going to do, because I know the rainy day section is separate from our standard dialogue section, because that is how the main game has it, is that it has its own rainy day file, and then each character has their own dialogue file. So because I want these characters to have dialogue for both things, I'm going to make 2 sections. So we're going to do another pair of open and close brackets. This is going to be our rainy day. So I'm going to put a space. I'm going to do 2 dashes, which will take me into EndNotes syntax. And then I'm going to just write rainy day. And that way I know what I'm doing there. At the end of the curly bracket, I'm going to do a comma, because that's going to tell it the next section is different. Another set of curly brackets for notes. Standard dialogue. See, I've got to keep Kenna and Jean separate. We're going to do another comma, make a 3rd section, new brackets, notes, and here is Jean's standard dialogue. So like I said, the rainy day dialogue is its own thing where it's got the rainy day line for all of the characters together. And then each character has their own standard daily dialogue file individually. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I'm going to open the wiki and kind of show you how it's set up. So this is the Modding Dialogue wiki. Everything you need for reference is going to be on this page. I will put a link in the comments so that you all can access it. Not in the comments, link in the description. Sorry, I need to use the correct word for what I'm going to actually do. So even just looking at this directory, you can tell that there's a lot of different types of dialogue here. And I'm just going to scroll through and do a basic walkthrough of the page, and then we will start with rain dialogue. So we have, starting with some of the special conversation topic type dialogues, you have special lines for if there's a breakup or a divorce or the green rain, or if somebody gets hit by a slingshot, and all of these have their own little things. So this is going to be your dialogue key. This is going to go ahead of your dialogue line, and when the game looks for is this key. So when it's green rain day versus if it's green rain year 2 and year 2 and onward. So you have one line for the first green rain and then a different line for all the other green rains. On the first year, the game looks for your character and looks for this green rain key. And if it finds this green rain key, then it's going to show the dialogue line for that specific key. And then similarly, the second year and after, it's going to look for the screen reign _2 key and find that line and play that after the previous year, the first year and onward. So there's all of these are your keys on this side. This is what the game looks for. So there's very specific things for specific types of events. So if there's a movie invitation and you want to have like specific dialogue for other than like, sure, I'll go to the movie. If you want like, oh yeah, I love the theater or something like that as your movie invitation dialogue. You can tag in a movie invitation as your key, whatever you want your dialogue to be, and then the game will play that instead of the generic dialogue line. There's things for the mermaid pendant, all of the marriage dialogue. None of the marriage dialogue is anything I'm going to worry about because Kenna and Jane are going to be small characters. They're married to each other. They're more in line with Gunther or Marlin, where there's a couple lines of dialogue and they kind of stay in their own location. But it made sense to me to have characters for that location. So what I'm actually going to go to do is I'm going to scroll past the festival dialogues and the location, and down here is where I want to be looking at for making just generic dialogue. So we have options for location. So if your character is in a specific location, standing on X, Y. So for example, what I might do later is I might have Kenna and Jean take turns washing dishes. And when they're in that particular spot, they may have a washing dishes dialogue line. And it would be location. So MP trailer underscore the coordinates right in front of the sink, the XY coordinates. For Father Joseph, he has Sunday sermon dialogue, where when he's standing beside the altar of Yoba on Sunday, he gives you a specific, like today's sermon was about loving your neighbor. Just little lines like that when he's standing in that specific location. Or, for example, when Shane in the vanilla game, when he is in Pierre's store and you get that line that says, better not bother Shane right now, he's working. This is how that is done. Generic dialogue you can set by day of the month, for example. So if it's the day before the egg hunt and the characters are like, tomorrow's the egg hunt. So I hope Abigail doesn't find all the eggs. Things like that. And then day of month, first year or later. Those two are how that is done. Day of week, you can say on Mondays, say this. On Fridays, maybe the character's going to the saloon. The example here is, for example, Sunday 4 is how's your day going? I think that's from Abigail's. And you can see there's different ways to do it. You can key it by heart level. So if you go Sunday 4 and you have 4 hearts and it's a Sunday, then it's how is your day going? If it's Thursday 2 hearts and it's after year 2, Sam will say, well, my dad is back. Have you met him? So there's examples here of how to do this. So what I would suggest doing is starting out with what kind of dialogue you want to use. How in depth do you want to go? How do you want to break it out? Do you want to break it out by hearts? Do you want just specific dialogues for each day of the week? Do you want very specific dialogue based on holidays? And once you have that planned out, then you can put in your keys and have a list of lines that you want to create. And that is probably what I'm about to do here. So you can even mix and match a little bit. There's also the ability to filter it by season. So you can have dialogue for each day of the week in spring, summer, fall, and winter, however you like it. And then as you go down the list, it gets into different things based on spouse dialogue and if you've got a kid or two kids, or if you're roommates instead of a spouse, and so on and so forth. So I definitely recommend looking through this and making a plan for what dialogue you want to make. So I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to do exactly that. And then I will show you the next step. But to start out with, let's just make a couple basic dialogue keys. And I'll show you the syntax and how to plug those in. We might flip between the wiki and our JSON for a couple minutes. And depending on how in depth I go, I might do 2 or 3 and then jump ahead to when all of it's set up. So the first thing we want to do is, actually, let's start with the rainy day. So the first thing we want to do is, we know we have 2 characters, so we're going to do a pair of quotes and a colon, and a second pair of quotes and a comma, one for each. And then we're going to jump back to the wiki. I'm going to find the rainy day dialogue here, rain dialogue. So it's, I think it's done by character name. That's why I had Jackie's dialogue up so I could confirm. Yes, so for rain day dialogue, I'm going to get my character data up so I can make sure I'm using the correct internal name. We had KennaWilliams.mp. I'm going to copy that because we need it to match our character's internal name. And we're going to put that in that first bit. And then our rain dialogue will go right here. And so, like, if that's all I had, if you clicked on Kenna and a rainy day, she'd just say rain. But I have a translation file already set up. So I'm going to go to my translation file. I'm going to open my dialogue. Close that now. I'm going to scroll to the end. And then I'm going to add a note so I know that this is where that starts. Instead of rain, you're going to do, for keying to a translation file, it's going to be 2 curly brackets. And again, in VS Code, if you highlight the word, it'll put it within the curly brackets. Then it's I1AN colon followed by your dialog key. So in this case, it's going to be So now that I've confirmed that I was consistent with the way that was spelled and corrected the typos where it was incorrect, so our dialogue is, our key will be dialogue.kenna single n dot rain. And I'm just going to copy that down here and then just change that to Jean. And now we copy this part, the dialogue.kenna.rain, because that is our key for our translation file. Double quotes, insert your key, colon. I'm going to put a TBD there because what I am doing is I am setting up all my keys first. and then I go through and add the actual dialogue line. And for me, that helps me ensure that I've got the code correct, which if I add a comma right there, that fixes that. So now I know that their rain dialogue is in there. We're going to keep that open because that's our translation dialogue file. So we're just going to keep going through. But this is our dialogue key that the game looks for on the rainy day file. And then it finds the character's internal name, and it's going to pull this dialogue file. And then this piece right here is telling it that that dialogue line is stored in the translation file under that particular key. So then it goes to the translation file, looks for the match, and then this is what it displays. So right now it'll just say TBD, to be determined. And after I've gotten my keys for them, then I go through and I write all of these lines. And if you want to do them one at a time, that is up to you. But for me, I like to make sure I have done all of my keys first. So we have our keys set up, but clearly it's not been added into the dialog file yet because I haven't added any instructions to do so yet. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do colon for log name. I'm going to set up my, I think it's 3 or 4 fields. 3, 4 fields. I'm going to do this 4 times. It's quotes, colon, quotes, comma. We want 4 of these. Okay. And then we're going to log name. And this is Maple Park. Action target. Action. Action is going to be edit data. Target. We want, I'm going to copy this because it's correct here. Our target is characters / dialogue / rainy. And then we want entries. T trace. And this, we want a pair of brackets, of square bracket, not square brackets, of curly brackets. Let me delete that because I'm just, every time I highlight something, I'm getting myself in trouble. I want a curly bracket, and then we want the ending curly bracket to go below our keys so that they are included in the entries. And then I'm going to put a comma just in case. I don't think I need a comma there. No, I don't need a comma there. So now, because our keys are within the rainy day field, they have been added in, so when the game looks for them, it will know it's there. I'm going to do this the correct way for the next 2 sections because I don't want to confuse anybody. So it is log name, colon. Again, our log name tells the game that if there is an error with this part, this is the log name we report with it, and it makes it easier to find and fix errors. Okay, action. We're doing edit data because we have already loaded in a blank file. Action, colon, edit data inside the quotes. Check it is characters dialogue internal name. Copy that bit. Just to make sure I spell it right. So quotes, target. Oh, I need a comma after our edit data so that goes correct. Another set of quotes, characters dialogue. And then we want our internal NPC name. We're going to copy our Jean's internal name. This is also why I like to do the rainy day first, because then I have the internal name right there. Okay. Now it's entries in the quotes, colon, or double curly. And I'm going to go ahead and put a space. So now when we collect our keys, all of our keys for their dialogue is going to go right here. All right, so the next bit is deciding what keys we want. I am thinking I'll probably just do one line per day of the week per season. So we want, let's see, season underscore key is how that is done. Okay. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to use the same keys for all of these. So spring lowercase. Oh, we need the quotes. I'm going to set up a pair of quotes, a colon, and a comma. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Spring in the notes. I am a bit of a dialogue fiend. I tend to go overboard on it. So this is my attempt to limit myself to just this. When I start looking at calendars and holidays, we'll see if I can prevent myself from adding even more. But it'll be spring underscore. So season underscore. We'll go through and add those. Okay. And then the day of the week, day of month, day of week. Use the first 3 letters on the day of the week, so it's Mon, Tu, Wid, Third, Fry, Sat, Sun. And you can see the yellow squiggles in my VS Code are going away as I make each of these unique. That is what we want. We want all of these to be unique. All right, now to save myself a lot of time, because all of this can be the same for Gene up to the second half of that translation key, because it's entered into the dialogue characters under his name instead of Kenna's, we can just copy everything I just wrote. Go to Gene's entries, paste it all in. And now it's just ready for the rest of this. Finish out my keys here. All right, so now we have all of our keys set up along with the translation key to send to the translation file. I am about to show you a trick that I really like with VS Code that you can do. And so instead of having to copy all of this by hand, you can copy your key over to your dialog. And we have only this part that we need, right? So what I do, so we're going to show you a trick I like with VS Code is you can highlight this little bit, which is going to be the same all the way down, and I don't have this anywhere else in our translation file because it's not needed. So you go to the end, you left click, click, change all occurrences. You want to arrow to the very end, and then you can hit your backspace key. And then because these are going to need to end in a quote, do a quote, colon, space, or double quotes, arrow past the last one, hit your comma. So we just did all of the ending of that all in one go, as opposed to having to go through by hand. Change all occurrences to the end. You can now we can do it without upsetting all of the, there, that's what I meant to do. And hey, that caught another error earlier up there when everything went red and said, hey, you got an error. Now it has done what we actually wanted it to do. And now, just to make sure that I have something in here, just in case I missed something, I'm going to highlight that, change all occurrences, arrow to the beginning, put my cursor inside the quotes, and just hit TBD. So that is how you set up your translation keys. And we have all of our dialogue keys now set up along with our entries into the dialogue file. So now all I have to do is go through and decide what they say for each of these things and just type it, replace my TBD. And you just put your dialogue right there between the quotes, and then that is what your characters will say. And that's it for a dialogue. I hope it wasn't too confusing. I will put the wiki link in the description, and I hope you found it helpful. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.